At this year's festival, we caught up with our friend, Fred Werner, head of strategic engagement at the United Nations ITU and a leading figure in AI for Good. With a focus on practical applications and global impact, Fred navigates the intersection of AI and sustainable development goals with expertise and passion, spearheading initiatives at the UN to harness AI for positive social change.
Hi, Lisa.
Great to see you again in Cannes in 2024. Thank you so much for joining us today on Navigating Abroad.
Thanks, great to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit about your background in leading in AI for Good and what work you've done in this space?
Yeah, so basically I work for ITU, and for those of you who don't know what the ITU is, it's the International Telecommunication Union, and we're the United Nations specialized agency for information and communication technologies. And basically we do three things, well, four actually if you count AI for Good. We coordinate radio spectrum and satellite orbits, we develop international standards that underpin modern telecommunication networks, and we assist developing countries in bringing up their ICT infrastructure through capacity building, training, and development work. And like I said, we are the organizers of AI for Good. And I think AI for Good is more relevant than ever before, especially now with the advent of generative AI, which it's fair to say AI has been mainstream now for about a year. And simply put, the goal of AI for Good is to identify practical applications of AI to advance the sustainable development goals and figure out how to scale those solutions for global impact.
So Fred, what's new and novel for 2024 at the AI for Good Summit? You guys have thrown so many amazing events over the last 7 years. What are you focused on for this year?
Yeah, so I would say AI for Good is more relevant now than ever. I mean, when we created it in 2017, it was almost like we were trying to convince the people, the public, our UN partners, hey, wake up, this is important, there's something to see here. And, I think we did a fair job of that. But all of a sudden, with the advent of ChatGPT and large language models, generative AI, last February, basically a year ago, it's just exploded. And it's fair to say that AI has become mainstream. And I like to think that all of the work we did between 2017 until now has kind of prepared for us, to at least be ready for this mainstreaming of AI. And if you're looking at it from whether it's from an ethical perspective or from a technical perspective, alignment issues, but more importantly, how do we make sure AI is for good and aligned with the sustainable development goals? I think all of the work that we did in those summits out makes us well positioned to respond to that.
Yeah, it's almost like it was meant to be. All the groundwork is laid. So now as everybody is scrambling to understand responsible AI and what AI ethics really entails, you guys have such a head start in terms of defining that and can scale it to such a broad audience of people that can benefit from it. So for folks that are interested in attending something like that, can you tell us a little bit more about the event that's coming up on May 31st?
Yeah, so I mean, basically AI for Good, the founding principle of AI for Good was we now have less than 10 years to advance the sustainable development goals. And AI holds great promise to advance many of those goals and targets, anything from climate change to clean energy, affordable healthcare, education for all, autonomous driving, robotics, all of the use cases are there. But also we have to be mindful of the unintended consequences of AI. So how do we, of course, top of mind is, will AI take our jobs? Job loss due to automation. But also if you're having machine systems, algorithms like making decisions on our behalf, how do we know these decisions are ethical? How do we know that the data that's fueling these decisions are inclusive and being mindful of bias in data sets? How do we know we're respecting privacy, security, and safety? Can we make sure that AI is inclusive? Is it sustainable? Does it really, address human rights as a kind of fundamental principle underlying all of these AI systems? And probably most importantly for ITU, will AI further deepen the digital divide or be used as a tool to help bridge the digital divide? So simply put, the goal of AI for Good is to identify practical applications of AI to advance the sustainable development goals and also scale those solutions for global impact. So really moving beyond the use cases, of which there are hundreds, if not thousands, but scaling those use cases globally.
That's very exciting work. And I know that once a year everyone convenes in Geneva, but for those that don't have the ability to travel for something like that, I believe you have other ways that people can participate as well. Do you mind sharing a little bit about how people that are interested in those topics can stay connected?
Absolutely. Now most people know AI for Good as the Global Summit, 5 days in Geneva, once a year. But our catchphrase is that it's more than a summit. And in fact, we have an all-year online platform called the Neural Network. And there we do something in the order of 150 150 to 200 online events per year, looking at AI aligned with all of 17 SDGs, and the speakers are, different professors, academics, industry folks, UN partners, people from civil society, NGOs, artists, athletes. So our approach is that AI is too important to leave to the experts alone, and we have to make great efforts to bring as many different people to the table who all want to chart a beneficial course for AI for humankind. And so that takes place on our online platform, and we've built a community now of about 25,000 people, and that's growing at a rate of about 200 to 300 a week. And it's quite phenomenal, really, and this is from 183 countries, and it could be anything from a PhD student to a professor to a CEO to just someone on the street who wants to learn more about AI. So leveraging that platform beyond the summit, and also it generates a number of collaboration activities. Another one of our catchphrases is that we're more than just a talk shop, and we'd like to do AI for good in action. So through this online activity, we generate a number of collaboration opportunities and basically creating AI for good solutions. And there's several ways we do this. So we launch what we call machine learning challenges. And here we basically source problem statements for global challenges that don't yet have solutions. And we go to the crowd and create incentivized competitions to solve machine learning puzzles, to solve, for example, AI in climate change, or AI in agriculture, or, for example, using geosatellite imagery to map deforestation, or use machine learning techniques to reduce the energy consumption of base stations. So these are really practical solutions, but it's also a good way of engaging the younger generation of coders and engineers in this solutions making process, and who knows, one day they might be future policymakers or standards makers or people who are actually putting up those guardrails of AI that everyone's talking about. We also have what we call the Innovation Factory. So that's a startup pitching competition that runs all year. So any startup that's using AI in a unique way to advance the sustainable development goals basically qualifies, and they apply, and there's a evaluation process, and then year long we have a kind of Dragon's Den or Shark Tank pitching session, and the best startups basically they make it to the final in Geneva, and then there they do a pitch towards our global audience and win prizes and mentorship, and hopefully it helps them get to the next level. And that's just yet another way of teasing out practical applications of AI. And of course, underlying all of that is standards. I said at the beginning, ITU, we're a standards development organization. We develop international technical standards for telecommunications, and AI has emerged to be one of our major standardization themes in the context of information communication technology networks. So how can you use AI to manage networks, to optimize networks, to make them autonomous, to reduce energy consumption, to optimize multimedia content, whether it's video compression or the quality of audio and video streaming, also looking at energy consumption of data centers. So there's a whole range of ITU standards emerging, leveraging AI to make better telecommunication networks, basically. But beyond that, we also have what we call focus groups. These are open groups, and you can think of it as pre-standardization efforts. So we have a number of collaboration efforts, for example, AI for Health with the World Health Organization, and also now WIPO, that's the the Intellectual Property Organization. And with these three UN agencies, basically they're trying to create an independent assessment platform so you can evaluate and test the efficacy of AI for health algorithms. So, for example, if you have a new drug that goes to market, it has to go to the FDA, you spend years and millions of dollars testing, there's huge amounts of oversight before you can put it on the market. And there's no shortage of useful AI for health applications. Many of them are just an app on your phone, and they're going up on app stores daily without any real oversight. And it's not to say that they're good or bad. A lot of them are actually amazing. I mean, you can probably spot heart disease by scanning your eyeball. You can see if you have skin cancer. You can check if you have diabetes. It's just by the sound of your cough. You can diagnose if you have tuberculosis or not. So there's all these amazing use cases. But if you're a healthcare policymaker, how do you know this app is good versus that app versus that app? There's actually no mechanism for evaluating that now. And it's a pity because a lot of these have high potential, but you just can't compare apples with apples. So this focus group, they're working on an open code platform that looks at sort of AI for health end-to-end development in an independent way. So if you are running a hospital, or you're a healthcare minister, or you're doing health policy, or you're a mayor, at one point you'd be able to leverage this platform to actually compare apples for apples and start to make some good decisions. So I think that kind of work where ITU leveraging its information communication technologies and telecommunications back network history combined with AI and working with different industry verticals like the automobile industry, the healthcare industry, the agriculture industry, partnering with different UN agencies like FAO, WMO, UNEP. We can basically serve as a catalyst to bring all these players together to advance AI for good in a way that wouldn't be possible alone.
It sounds like you guys are really unifying the voices of people around the world to help people that are maybe business leaders or in the private sector or the public sector that are making some of these decisions by bringing the perspectives of 183 different countries into one portal, especially providing standards and frameworks that are freely available to the public. You really are giving people an advantage of being able to think through things like ethics by design and having a step forward and not starting from scratch every time they're approaching these challenges. So I think you're really onto something special. For people that want to find your platform, do you mind sharing a little bit more about how they can find that information?
Yeah, sure. So AI for Good, it's we're online, so it's aiforgood.itu.int. But if you just Google it, it'll pop up. You don't have to remember URL. So what I would say is, if you're interested, is go to the website. First of all, sign up for the neural network, complete a profile, and there you'll have access to all our content since 2017, probably close to about 1,000 AI for Good sessions now. And you can connect with 25,000 other experts who also believe in AI for good. I'd say that's step one. Step two, I would say come to our summit in Geneva. If you can't come in person, you can see it online through the neural network. Step three is if you have something to offer, if you're a data scientist or you have some AI expertise, or you just think you have something to contribute and you want to help advance the SDGs, our different challenges are open. Our startup pitching competition is open, but also our focus groups, they're completely open. They require no membership, open to anyone who has something to offer. We're contribution driven. So if you're interested in participating, you would just simply go to the landing page, sign up, there's a sign up form. Someone will be in touch, and then you can be part of this group and then actually, do some work and work with other experts. So those are probably the three main ways to get involved right now.
Can you share a little bit about, since last year when we had the opportunity to connect and talk, some of the things that have been accomplished based on this whole generative AI revolution that we've experienced? What are some of the cool practical applications you've seen that have come out this year that have helped with some of the goals that AI for Good focuses on?
Yeah, so there's no shortage of positive use cases. So I think what's been really encouraging is through the Innovation Factory startup pitching competition, if you see the solutions that are emerging, and they're not just use cases. I mean, these are startups, like they're actually products that people will start to buy and use. Super encouraging. I mean, just last night we saw a startup that's basically using AI to translate sign language, but not standard sign language. It was a form of Brazilian sign language. And it may be a niche use case for Brazil, but still, those people are not a part of society in a way that we're used to, and through that application, all of a sudden they can communicate really well. And we saw another use case of using AI to basically create vibrations for music, but also like approaching cars and things for people who can't hear or who are, have hearing disabilities. So many different use cases through the machine learning challenges. For example, we had one challenge, which is basically, how can you use machine learning to reduce the energy consumption of telecommunication networks? Now, if you look at the energy consumption, 90% of it is energy, and 70% of it is energy consumed at the base station level. And so we worked with some telecommunications operators and equipment vendors who actually gave us access to the base station data and made it available to hundreds of teams, basically using machine learning to try and optimize these base stations to reduce the energy consumption. And I think that the better teams managed to reduce the energy consumption by 20%.
Wow.
And if if you apply that on scale, that's huge. And those are the kind of solutions that I think are AI for good, but also if you're looking at the energy crisis and how to address climate change, that's a pretty practical example of using AI just to be smart and to reduce energy consumption in different ways. And also something new that is coming for next year is, or it's actually this year, in May, it's coming quick, is even though the summit is 2 days, we're adding an extra day called Day Zero, called AI Governance Day. And I think what's encouraging is there's probably never been a point in history where humans have thought so hard and long about what it means to be human. And that's because of AI, because AI is almost like a mirror that you hold up to yourself, and you almost see a reflection in the sense that if you have an AI that can theoretically do anything a human can do, then you have to start to answer different questions, like what would it do in this scenario or in that scenario, and then very quickly you enter into the ethical domains of, what is good and what is bad, and we've actually advanced that discussion quite a lot. Obviously, you have the Sustainable Development Goals, you have human rights. With UNESCO, we have an ethical framework from AI, and that's really triggered governments around the world to move at warp speed. I can't remember another time where they raced so hard to come up with some policies and regulation and governance to make sure that AI is safe and responsible, but also beneficial for all. And if you look at all these processes, so for example, you have the EU Act, everyone knows about, the Biden executive order. A few months ago, you have the UK AI Safety Summit. In the UN, there's a high-level advisory body on AI. In China, there's a whole stream on AI governance. And all these different texts and governance acts and processes that are emerging almost all at the same time. It's encouraging because there's mass mobilization, and what we're going to try to do at the summit is look at, rather than reinvent the wheel, let's have a look at all these texts, find what's in common. And what we've seen is there's a lot more in common than there is not in common, and then try to go to the next step and say, okay, what are the practical pathways for implementation? Because the texts are really ambitious. I think they're all in the right direction. The words are good, and they didn't just happen by chance. People have been thinking long and hard about these things for probably about 7 or 8 years now. But how do you turn words into action? Because there's a huge gap between the ambitions and what we're currently able to do, especially in government. So I think there'll be a huge focus on practical implementation, also addressing the skills gap, the knowledge gap, the expertise gap, the competency gap, and really having that practical way, which hopefully will help to advance things forward. So there'll be sort of two streams of AI for Good this year, the AI governance stream, and then of course the AI for Good, which we know about.
So Fred, for business leaders today that want to start embracing AI for good, what are your best recommendations?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. And I think actually adopting the Sustainable Development Goals as a kind of guiding framework is anyone can do. And actually I've seen, it's quite astonishing, the number of annual reports now where if you open, the typical annual report, in the old days it was all about corporate social responsibility. Quite often now they'll actually map their annual report to mapping to the UN SDGs. And I think that's something you could do whether you're big tech or a startup or a medium-sized company. So using that framework is a pretty good place to start. But also one thing we were talking about on panels today was, and there's on the ethicist panel, someone was saying that in many disciplines, like if you're studying a certain topic, ethics is something that's sort of a mandatory course. If you're doing medicine or going in certain sciences, you have to study ethics.
Sure, the Hippocratic Oath.
Yeah. But that's not the case for a lot of professions, certainly not for coders or people who are probably thinking about a startup or in this kind of fast-moving tech industry. So I think actually, and this is maybe an educational issue, but actually building in ethics or ethical AI, even at a young age, in educational systems and in university courses, but also if you're a business leader or a business manager, really educating yourself around that. If you marry ethics with the Sustainable Development Goals framework, I think you're on a pretty good path to doing AI for good.
I love that, because so many people want to be doing responsible AI and want to be on the right path, but don't know where to start. And I think that gives a really clear framework and a first step for business leaders. We were here last year. And we definitely saw the themes of you get AI, everything's going to be AI. What do you take away from this year's conference in terms of the new and novel that we're learning as this technology is evolving?
Yeah, and I think what I've seen this year is the mainstreaming of AI. I mean, it's, and there's still a lot of discussion on what the problems are and how we should address them. But I kind of think we know what the problems are, but they keep being repeated. And I would like to see more of a focus on solutions and implementation now. So really sort of moving beyond the words and actually, walking the talk. And I think we're ripe for that now. Now's the time to do it. And also AI is moving so quickly, if you keep the discussions going for too long, then you've kind of missed the boat again and you have to start all over again. So I think this would be the year of implementation. It's mainstream, but we also need to implement a lot of things that we know we can do. And I think at the summit that would be a good place to do that, especially on AI Governance Day, where a big theme will be how do we turn these words and these ambitions into implementable actions at the government level, but also in businesses and universities and everything in between. So I think that would be the challenge for the year.
So it's a great time for subject matter experts to be thinking through how they can leverage these new technologies to be able to accomplish their goals today, to be more efficient in doing that. So what a wonderful time to be alive. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective with us today, Fred. It's always a pleasure to see you.
Thank you, Lisa.
I'll see you in Geneva.
I'll see you there. Yeah.